screen just disappeared. There it is. Okay. Hello, this is Amy Parham and Austin Zatwell from Habitat Texas, welcoming Sonia Lee and Sabrina Fitz from Habitat International. This is a MPAR refresher course for people who came to one of our 6 workshops that we held in Texas around the state last year. Sabrina and Sonia were amazingly helpful in trying to get Habitat in Texas up to speed and working with our team from Michelle from Waco and Michelle from Fort Worth and Michelle from, who am I missing? Willetta from Tyler and Michelle Seymour from Midland and Trish from Houston. So that was our MPAR team, and thank you very much for all that you did to help us this year get up to speed. Welcome all of the attendees, and thank you for your support of Habitat Texas. Let me let Austin say just a few words. She's the Special Events Coordinator at Habitat Texas, and she's going to be running the webinar. So go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, well, thank you all for being here. Just a quick plug, we have another webinar on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. It's just a 30-minute webinar, and that's Central Time, 1 to 1:30 on Wednesday. And this webinar will be on in-kind, and it's an organization, a platform, an online platform for you to go on and create a fundraising project of some sort, and you kind of create a story about it. It's really cool. And then different donors, new donors, will come in and see the supplies that you're asking for and either make a monetary donation or donate supplies that you've asked for. And it saves you money because it's completely free for Habitat affiliates. And it creates kind of a story around your fundraising project and engages new donors. So I really encourage you to go sign up for our webinar. It's free. Check out our Habitat Texas calendar page and you'll see it there. And then as for today, on the webinar today, you are muted. And so if you have a question or if you have a comment, if you look on the left side of your screen, right now it probably says participants, but up there right by that word there's a tab for chat. And if you go on, Amy's already tested it, you can just type your question and enter it, and I will relay that question to Sabrina and Sonia and get your question answered as quickly as possible. So let's just stick to using that. And at the end, if we have some time, we'll open up your calls and unmute you, and you can ask them questions personally.
Great, thank you. All right. Sabrina, Sonia, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And do we have any of our Texas trainers on the line today? Austin, you know how many are on?
It looks like we're at about 10 maybe.
Okay, all right, great. Well, we wanted to thank first Amy and all of our trainers for going out into the state and really helping everybody understand and comply with the mortgage regulations. And today's goal is Amy send along to us the questions that you guys had after your training. So, there we go. So you'll see that Sonia and I grouped your questions into this agenda, and basically what we want to do is answer all of the questions that you guys submitted after your trainings, and then kind of reinforce the topics that we think are the most complicated and we get the most questions about. So that brings us to the following agenda: house pricing, which is different than financing, which includes your affordable first mortgage and any second mortgages. Then there seems to be a lot of questions on servicing, so we wanted to talk about not only the federal laws related to servicing, but also HFH policy, which is new policy 24. Then there were a few questions on the loan origination disclosures and when certain disclosures are triggered and what needs to be in the disclosures. So we'll hit on that. And lastly, we'll just hit on who is a loan originator and what that means. So without further ado, our first topic is house pricing. And you'll see we really want to get across the point that house pricing is separate from house financing, and we want you to think of it like that. So what is sales price? When we say sales price, it's fair market value based on an appraisal. That's not necessarily what the home buyer is paying. So sales price is the total consideration paid by or on behalf of the home buyer. So that's going to include any first mortgage plus any second mortgage plus any down payment assistance. So according to new policy 22, sales price is fair market value based on an independent appraisal. You can have appraiser conflicts, right? So you can't use staff or board members. And we received a question from somebody, what happens if you get 2 appraisals? Do you have to provide both to the homeowner, or can you only provide the one you use? And the answer is the federal law requires you have to provide both.
Hey, really quick plug. Are these slides going to be made available to all the participants?
Yes, Amy, can you circulate them after?
Yes, everyone who signed up will get the slides, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So again, sales price is what you're putting on line 101 of your HUD 1 statement or line 1 of section K if TRID applies. And we get a lot of questions about that. Why do we have to use fair market value? And remember, Habitat homes are being used as comps. So we want to protect the market value in the community. We want to be very transparent about what the sales price is made of, which includes the affordable first mortgage, any down payment assistance, and any subordinate mortgages in favor of Habitat. So can we pause there and see if anybody has any additional questions on just the sales price component? Because I think there were a lot of questions about that.
We can either unmute or use the chat feature.
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay, so then the next thing is we are setting affordability through financing, right? Your sales price, your fair market value is not how you make a house affordable. Instead, you make a house affordable to the individual home buyer based on setting the first mortgage. So, what does the policy require you consider when you set the first mortgage amount? There's 2 rules. The first is the first mortgage cannot exceed 30% of gross income at the time of closing. Your first mortgage has to include things like principal, taxes, hazard insurance, and flood insurance if that's applicable to this homeowner. You can include other things if you want, such as homeowner fees. And some affiliates will consider a cushion, so saying, let's say 28% instead of 30%. And we're going to go through these calculations later. We just want to get out the basic principles here. So in addition to the 30% front-end ratio, there's also a 43% back-end ratio. So when you're setting your first mortgage, the total debt cannot exceed 43% of your gross income. And when you're calculating that, you want to consider all the debts that would take more than 10 months to pay off, and you include the mortgage payment in that. One thing to point out here is when considering income for the first mortgage, you're considering the income of the home buyer. So you all remember the slide from your trainings where you're considering need, it's the income of the entire family. But for ability to pay and structuring the first mortgage, it's just the income of the home buyer. And really the number one question we're getting here is that doesn't seem fair. Shouldn't all first mortgages be the same? And I think many of you had that question, and the answer is no. The first mortgages should not all be the same. All 2 bedrooms are not going to have the same first mortgage. I want you to think about it as Habitat provides only the amount of subsidy that the specific homeowner needs, right? Need differs among our homeowners, so why would they all have the same subsidy? If we over-subsidize one homeowner who doesn't need as much subsidy, we're not able to serve as many people. And one of my colleagues uses this example that if you have 3 people standing on a ladder, and you all are trying to reach the same fruit. Some people are going to be shorter than others, right? So they're going to need a higher ladder to reach the same fruit. That's like our homeowners. They all need different amounts of subsidy. Each one has a different amount to make the mortgage affordable. So the subsidies are going to be a little different based on the homeowner's specific income. Let's pause again and see if there's any questions on how you set the first mortgage.
Again, I'm not seeing any, but if everybody wants to use that chat feature, that's going to be how you ask questions. So I'm not seeing any right now, but I will let you know as soon as I see some.
Okay, so that's a change from old policy, so we just really want to reiterate how to set the first mortgage now. And we put together this example for you guys on the next slide. So here's an example we made up. The sales price, again, is based on your appraisal. So in this example, your sales price is $100,000 because that's fair market value based on the appraisal. Based on the 30% front end and 43% back end of the income of your homeowner, they can afford $75,000. That's what they're paying in the first mortgage. They get down payment assistance for $10,000. So that means we're going to have to put a subordinate mortgage of $15,000 on. And what we're trying to get across here is that $75,000 is going to differ based on what is affordable to that particular homeowner. And the financing structure, which are the 75, 10, and 15,000 numbers, that's the financing, which is different than the sales price based on fair market value. So as we saw in that last slide, under new policy, affiliates must secure the difference between the fair market value and the first mortgage with one or more forgivable subordinate mortgages. So you have to protect the equity at time of closing, and that can either be in favor of a third-party funder or in favor of your affiliate. Something that we really encourage you to consider is So the new policies give you the option to recapture the subordinate mortgages. HMHI is not saying you have to make these repayable, but we're giving you the option to make them repayable. You must disclose the terms to your homeowners. A lot of times we were finding that the homeowners didn't understand the terms of their second loans, whether they were forgivable unless default, refinance, or selling of the house. Or if you are recapturing money through your second mortgage, you need to fully disclose the terms and make sure that your homeowners understand it. Under our new policies for these subordinate mortgages, the term cannot be more than 40 years. And you need to track and report all balances and provide an annual statement for both the first and second mortgages. And I think we had a question from one of you about what happens if you do want to recapture your second note. So how is that going to work? What that would say is upon the first mortgage being paid off, the second will become repayable in a certain amount of equal payments. And I think the question there was, what do you do if the homeowner at the end of the first mortgage can't repay the second note back? And really, your board has to decide then at that point what you want to do. And you need to have a policy, and you need to apply consistently. But this is really up to your board to decide.
One of the things that's important to know if you are, this is Sonia Lee, by the way, one of the things that's important to know that if you are going to recapture a deferred second is at the time of origination, you must have an end-of-term strategy. The affiliate must have included in that mortgage how you're going to handle that mortgage when it comes due at the end of the first mortgage. It more than likely will result in a balloon payment, and then what do you do from there? Is the affiliate going to refi it and amortize it into 10 more years and capture it that way? Or is the affiliate going to work with the homeowner to then go out on the open market and get a regular mortgage to pay off that debt? It has to be something that's thought about before you enter into this instrument with the homeowner or home buyer. Any questions on that?
Don't think so right now.
Perfect. All right. So the next couple slides that we're going to talk about, these show examples of financing a loan. As you can see, we're starting off with a home buyer that has $27,000 in gross income annually. And if you look at the two examples, the example on the left-hand side, the home buyer, their gross income is the same as on the right. The difference is the recurring debt on the left-hand side is higher than the person on the right-hand side. And if you look down further, you can see in the pink section what the difference in the mortgage is. So if you think back to what Sabrina was saying about standing on a ladder to get to that fruit, one, there's clearly the person on the right-hand side, they don't need as much ladder to reach the fruit as the person on the left-hand side. Okay, but they've earned the same amount of money, just that one has more debt than the other. They're both amortized. The loan term is 25 years each. The fair market value, the appraised value of the house is $90,000. The difference comes in is what they are allowed to pay out or what they can afford to pay out each month. So this is why it's important when we talk about not, houses side by side and each paying the same amount. In this instance, they may make the same amount, but they have different debts. So one person needs a little bit more to help them make the house affordable than the other home buyer does. Okay?
Alicia.
All right. So this, when you get the presentation, the affordable mortgage calculator right at the top, that's actually a live link, and it'll take you to this example. The yellow area is the only area that you would fill in, and the rest of it will compute. This calculator, the basis of this calculator is actually from Michelle, I think from Waco.
We're very grateful, Michelle.
Yes, either Waco or Midland. I think it is Waco, who developed the basis of this calculator, and then we here at HFHI just added a little bit more verbiage to it so it would be a little bit clearer. But this is an excellent calculator for affiliates to use to really understand the 30% debt to income ratio and also the 43% back end ratio. It's a really good calculator that demonstrates that for you. Okay?
Okay, we do have a question. If these two families were equally eligible, is it legal to go for the family that can afford the higher PMT for more money back to the affiliate?
It depends. What does your policy say? If it's coming down to need, which a lot of affiliates do, they're going to have to articulate what that need is, why they're selecting one family over the other. Okay. Any other questions?
Here's another. Could you remind us what is included in recurring debt?
In recurring debt, anything that the home buyer owes that must be paid off in installments of 10 months or greater. So your credit card, your student loans, your car payments, anything that you've taken credit that you have to pay back in more than 4 installments over 10 months or more.
So sometimes we get the question, do we include in that second cell there things like cell phone bills and cable bills? And the answer there is it depends on what your affiliate decides, but I believe that industry standard would be not to include that. Is that right, Sonia? Sonia has given me the thumbs up. That is correct. So that's a question we get a lot. What goes, just like you asked, what goes in that second cell? And that's more of long-term debt.
Right.
So things like student loans, credit cards,
car payments, medical debt, and so on. Now, Habitat affiliates tend to account for cell phone payments and utilities and so on in debt-to-income ratios. As Sabrina said, it's not typically something that's done in the regular mortgage world. Because of the market that we serve, we tend to want to put that in. If we're going to factor that in at all, then we should factor that into the back-end ratio. So yes, into your recurring debt. But it's not something that's typically done.
I think the important point there is whatever your board decides, that's the calculation you have to use for all homeowners. You can't just pick and choose. Some homeowners you're going to include their cell phone, but not others.
Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, yes, one just came in. Is there a formula for deciding the term of the loan, or does the affiliate make a policy on that? Does it vary or stay consistent?
Is there, sorry, I didn't hear it off. Is there a formula for determining
the term of the loan, or does the affiliate make a policy on that? And then does it vary or stay consistent?
The affiliate can make that decision. HFHI has a policy that says that your loans should be no more than 30-year terms, but if you need to extend it to up to 40 years to make it affordable for the home buyer, then you're permitted to do so. But that should be the exception and not the rule. So if affiliates want to have 30-year loans, if you think about the reasons for having the terms, one of the reasons for the terms is to make it affordable for the home buyer. So if you are able to have your home buyer pay back the loan in 20 years versus 25 or 30 years, it's actually better for the affiliate because they're getting the mortgage is being paid off sooner than if it's extended out for the 30 years. If you need to make it to the 30 years to make it more affordable, to spread out the payments longer for the home buyer, then that's something certainly that can be done. But terms can be set by your board. There's no bottom requirement. HFHI policy. There's only a top end requirement. So you can't exceed 30 unless you have to make it affordable for the home buyer. Then you can't exceed 40.
Living in it, it could be where you have 55 and they have.
And I think we got this in one of our Texas sessions. are you allowed to sometimes set 20 years for some homeowners and then other years set 30, for other homeowners set 30 years? Right? Was that the question? Maybe not.
Are there any questions?
I think that's it for right now.
All right.
Oh, wait, sorry. Oh,
sorry?
Yep, that's one on my end. I'll figure it out. Y'all keep going.
Okay, perfect. So on to the next slide. No, one more. Sorry. So here's an example. Same income, but here's an example of a 30-year loan on your left-hand side and a 20-year loan on your right-hand side. If you look and you see debt is the same in both, and so on. The difference is, the difference should be how much the mortgages are. So a 30-year term, your sales price is $90,000. That's what you get from your fair market value or appraisal. Your first mortgage is $80,580, and your soft second is $9,420. Where if it's a 20-year term, your first mortgage is reduced and your second mortgage is increased. So you are, in this situation, you are better off with a 30-year term. Well,
depends how you define better.
Yes, absolutely. It does define how you define better. But I would more than likely say that it is probably better to have a 30-year term. It's going to take you a longer time, but you're going to get more of your money back than if you were going over a 20-year term and getting less of your money back, providing more of a subsidy when there's a 20-year term. Any questions? Okay.
Don't think so.
All right, perfect. So another question that came up had to do with servicing. Habitat affiliates are fortunate to fall under what's considered a small servicer exemption that the CFP issued in 2014. And then further clarified or added on to it in, I think at the end of 2014. With that second bullet, it now includes just about every single affiliate, Habitat affiliate across the country. Although there is this small servicer exemption that we are lucky enough to have, there's still some things that it's important for Habitat affiliates to be mindful of. Number one is HFA policies, and although the exemption might, legally we don't have to do it because of the exemption, it's important that Habitat affiliates do it just to be a responsible servicer. Okay? So we'll start off by talking about requirements under Policy 24, which is one of the new policies that came out in July of 2015. So here are just some highlights of Policy 24. It requires affiliates to know what the applicable laws are, not just at the federal level, but also at the state and local level if there are specific laws. Local level, you've got to know what they are so that you can incorporate them into your policy. Your policy is not complete if you've only got federal laws included in it, because then you may not be complying with all the laws of the land. Also, for affiliates that outsource, which I know a lot of you do, you must be aware of the regulations that your servicer that governs your servicer. You should be reviewing your contract periodically with them to ensure that you understand who's got the responsibility for certain things, when are certain things owed to you, certain things like your report, so you know how well your homeowners are paying and so on. You've got to know what your servicer's loss mitigation requirements are. What are they doing? At what point are they taking action with your homeowners? Do you need to be involved at any point? You've got to make sure that these things are clearly articulated in your contract. Also, you want to make sure that you are, as I said earlier, receiving a timely reporting of your account status. I'll just throw a little thing in here. It's not on here, but I just think it's important to address. If you are outsourced, you, the affiliate, have the responsibility for anti-money laundering compliance. So when you get your report for the account status and when payments are being made, it's your responsibility to ensure that if there's an unusual transaction from that homeowner, that you are flagging it and investigating in a very quiet way to determine if this is an unusual transaction, or is it just something, maybe they got a big raise or maybe they got an inheritance or something. But you need to figure out why, and this is actual if whatever your investigation uncovers does not seem to fit, feel good, it doesn't feel right with you, then I would suggest that you go ahead and file a suspicious activity reporting. All right. The other thing that, sorry?
Sorry. What's that bullet, servicing file must be maintained, mean?
Okay, I'm just getting to that. Hang on.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So the other thing that Policy 24 requires is that each affiliate has a board-approved comprehensive servicing policy. And when we say comprehensive, we mean from everything from collecting the mortgage payment all the way to when the account is paid off and everything in between, including your loss mitigation, your delinquencies, foreclosure, and so on. Right? The servicing file is a file that must be maintained, and this is required not just under Policy 24, it's also required under law. All of the transactions for each homeowner must be kept in what's referred to as a servicing file, and that must be maintained until 1 year after the loan has been paid off, or you've transferred the file to be serviced by a third-party servicer. Okay? You must provide an accurate balance to homeowners at least annually of each outstanding mortgage balance. So your outstanding balance for your first and any subordinate balances. And the reason why this is put into our policy is to, a lot of times the homeowners sign that second mortgage a long time ago and they've forgotten that it may get triggered at some point. And we've run into situations where homeowners have now, they're retiring, they want to move closer to their family and they're selling their home. And when they call to get a payoff balance, they realize that this subordinate mortgage now is going to come due. And they don't remember ever signing the papers for it. They didn't remember that there's a balance on it. They just didn't know anything about it. This keeps us honest. Also keeps the homeowner reminded that there is a subordinate mortgage on the property that may come due, may get triggered at some point.
We do.
Okay. All right, any questions on that? Okay. Continuing on with the requirements of Policy 24, it covers escrow account management and also delinquency and enforcement. So escrow, it's not as detailed, but it does go into requiring initial and annual escrow statements, and then also ensuring that each affiliate has a separate account for the homeowner's funds. It's very important to note that escrow funds do not belong to the affiliate, they belong to the homeowner. Okay? And it can't be borrowed and can't be used for any other purpose than to pay each payee for the homeowner at the specific time. The other thing that Policy 24 requires is delinquency and enforcement. So in the event you have a homeowner that misses a payment and is now delinquent, we have to make sure that we know when the delinquency occurs and we categorize the delinquency accurately, because we are required by the 45th day to provide a specific notice to the homeowners. You've got to make sure that in your policy you've identified what type of arrangements or trial modifications that you may offer to your homeowners if they do get into a delinquency situation. It's very important that you, as an affiliate, identify what type of loss mitigation options are going to be available to their homeowners. And based on the homeowner, you're going to have to re-underwrite your homeowner to determine what is the best solution to put them in if you're going to be offering them a loss mitigation option. And the other thing in the delinquency enforcement is foreclosure is permitted. This is not new, but we just think it's important to put in the policy. Our goal is never to put someone out of their house, but there comes a time, as I'm sure some of you have been in, that the relationship is not, it can't be saved. So we have to go to the most severe steps to foreclose.
All right, we just have a couple of questions here. Does the requirement to make annual disclosure of subordinate mortgage balance apply to silent second mortgages as well as second mortgages that are repayable?
I'm sorry, Austin. Can you repeat it?
It says, yes. Does the requirement to make annual disclosure of subordinate mortgage balance apply to silent second mortgages as well as second mortgages that are repayable?
Yes, to every single mortgage. Even though most mortgages are silent, they can trigger. So there's 3 instances that they could trigger, so it's very important for these balances to be provided to the homeowners at least annually.
Okay, and then the other one would be going back to disclosing subordinate mortgage amounts to homeowners. Does HFHI have a suggested template for that?
No, I'm sorry, we don't, and the reason why we don't is because everybody winds down their subordinate mortgages differently. There's no one model out there. I've spoken to at least 10 different affiliates, and they all do it different ways.
Great, that's it for us right now.
All right, perfect, thank you. Okay, so continuing on with servicing. And there was a question asked from one of the affiliates, what are the specific requirements of the law for small servicers? So we just went through what the policy requires, so now we're going to go through what the law requires. So if you fall under the small servicer exemption, the next couple things or the next few things is what the law requires to do. So under the Truth in Lending Act, you're required to promptly credit payments and respond to any payoff requests. So this is very, very important to know. For responding to payment requests, we have 7 days in which that has to be made. Now, if you have any type of equity sharing agreement with your mortgage, you can extend that time, but you need to let your homeowner know that you're going to need more time, because more than likely you're going to have to get an appraisal to determine what that payoff amount is going to be. And for crediting, for promptly crediting payments, that means when you get a payment from your homeowner, you apply it to their account. If you don't apply it the day it's received, it cannot have any negative impact on your homeowner's account. This rule also permits affiliates or gives affiliates 3 options in which to handle a partial payment. You can return it, you can collect it and apply it immediately, or what HFHI recommends is to keep it and hold it until you get a full periodic payment, and and then apply it. And so the full payment is going to be your principal and your escrow. That's your full payment, and then you would apply it. All right? A lot of affiliates will keep it and apply it. You have to be mindful that once you do that, however you apply it, you've got to make sure that the other side of the transaction is done. A lot of affiliates will take that money and they will apply it to escrow, and sometimes that throws the balance off. That's why we recommend that you keep the money in an unapplied funds account until you get the full payment, and then you would disperse it accordingly. All right? The other thing that the small servicer requires is have to provide acknowledgments for error resolution and information requested within 5 days of receiving it. So you have to provide the acknowledgement that you've received it in 5 days, but then you have between 30 and 45 days to actually do the investigation, correct the error, and provide a response to the homeowner of what was done. Okay? There seems to be a lot of background noise. I don't know if anyone else is hearing it but us. Very distracting. So if you can put your phones on mute for me, that would be really appreciated. Thank you. All right, so continuing what's required under small servicer exemption. The next two, number 3 and 4, we've got fourth place insurance and loss mitigation. We being small servicers, we have to comply with just pieces of those two rules. We don't have to follow the full-blown rules, but just pieces of them which are identified here. So under the fourth place insurance, we would fourth place if we can get the insurance for cheaper than what we would disperse from the homeowner's escrow account. That's the way the rule is written. Now, there are questions. Do you have to, if your homeowner is delinquent, do you have to continue to pay into escrow, or can you just let it go? The law doesn't require you to continue paying. We strongly recommend that affiliates continue to pay because the asset is yours, the affiliates. You've got the collateral on the house. That house is yours. That property is yours until the mortgage is paid for. So you want to ensure that it's being protected. If you don't pay the taxes and you don't pay the insurance, there's a possibility that there's going to be a tax lien on it, possibility if there's damage to the house, whether it's a fire or other things, that there won't be any insurance coverage to repair it. So to protect your asset, the affiliate's asset, you want to make sure that there is adequate insurance on the property, even if the homeowner is delinquent. And then for loss mitigation, there are two key things that we must follow as small servicers. One has to do with if we work out some type of arrangement with a delinquent homeowner, even though they're 120 days delinquent and they're paying in accordance with the agreement, we can't file for foreclosure. And the other thing is we cannot file for foreclosure unless a homeowner is more than 120 days delinquent. Okay? So the next items, these are still under the servicing laws, but small servicers are exempt. So under the law, small servicers don't have to have policies and procedures. However, HFHI's Policy 24 requires affiliates to have policies and procedures. Also, the law requires or doesn't require small servicers to have an early intervention with delinquent borrowers. This is something that we caution affiliates on because the earlier we can find out what's wrong with or why a homeowner is delinquent is the sooner actions can be taken to save that either to get your homeowner on track or to save that asset. All right? So continuing along, so the law requires continuity of contact with delinquent borrowers, very similar as the early intervention. The small servicer exemption doesn't require it, but we think that it's something that's important for affiliates to do with their delinquent home buyers. Just like you contact them early enough to figure out what's wrong, what's causing the financial hardship, stay in touch with them to hopefully keep them on track, make sure they're progressing along with whatever arrangements you've made with them. And number 8 is the periodic statement. Small servicers don't have to comply with the periodic statement. HFHI strongly recommends that if you don't or can't provide some type of periodic statement, then at least a coupon book, an annual coupon book that goes out with each month, a balance on it and where they need to send their payments and so on, that at minimum that's something that we should have. All right. So any questions? Any questions about the laws and the small servicer exemption?
Again, if you have a question, just write it in that chat box and I will relay it to our speakers. Don't see any right now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So earlier when we talked about Policy 24, I mentioned that you've got to be aware of federal laws, state laws, and even local laws. So just to give you a little perspective, these are some of the things that may be different at the state level than at the federal level. So, and this is related to servicing. So pre-foreclosure foreclosure filing could be notices, could be a mediation that's required. You need to know what your state law is so that you can ensure that you've built it into your policy. Escrow administration, depending what your state, some states have a specific type of account that you must keep your escrow account in. You've got to know what it is so that you can apply it. Payment treatment is another. So how do you handle late payment? Do you apply it to the oldest outstanding balance, or do you apply it to the newest outstanding balance? If your state is silent on any of these things, you ensure that you pick a position, ensure that it's in your policy, and then that's the way you would treat all of your homeowners going forward. And that's the same thing, just going back to partial payment. The law gives you 3 options of a partial payment. Pick one, make sure it's in your policy, and that's the one that you would apply consistently. Okay? Also, state laws may be different on delinquency management and late fees and when it accrues. So be sure to know what your state laws are. Okay?
So that's the end of the servicing piece, and I think we had several servicing questions, so let's just take a pause and see if there's any outstanding servicing questions before we get back to origination. All right. Please remember that the origination process is a 2-phase process, right? In the Habitat model, we have the first phase is our partnership or ECOA phase, and that's the initial outreach, the initial underwriting, and then it ends in a partnership agreement. And then the second phase is what we call the RESPA, or the loan phase, and that's where the potential homeowner is working on fulfilling all of the conditions to the partnership agreement, and if they're fulfilled, ultimately ends in loan execution and loan closing.
So just, if I could just clarify one thing. I know we typically say that ECOA ends with the partnership agreement. It technically doesn't end, but it signifies a transfer. We're moving into a different piece of work now, but ECOA still continues all the way along. So it doesn't really stop.
I'm sorry, and Sonia's right, and we'll get into this. The disclosures required under ECOA do continue within the rest of the phase. So we've received a few questions. What does it mean? What disclosures do we have other than what are typically called the initial and closing disclosures under RESPA? And the main disclosures under ECOA are these. The goal of ECOA is to really keep the homeowner informed. So prior to Dodd-Frank, lenders were able to take all this information from the applicants and just kind of sit on it and not be transparent and not tell the homeowner what was going on. And now ECOA says you can no longer do that. So they have 3 deadlines by which the affiliates, lenders, must notify the homeowners about application decisions. So the first deadline is what you see here on slide 19. So within 30 days after you receive your first piece of information that you use to evaluate your homeowner, and importantly this could be either in writing or over the phone or verbally, you need to send one of these 4 notices within that 30-day time frame. Now in the Habitat model, number 4, the notice of acceptance is highly unlikely, right? You are not going to accept an applicant within 30 days of receiving your first piece of information. So let's focus on the first 3. Within 30 days, you might deny an applicant just based on that information that you initially received. If you decide to deny that applicant, you need to send an adverse action notice. You'll see that these are all blue hyperlinks, which means we have templates to all of these documents on My Habitat. So the adverse action notice must comply with ECOA and FCRA if a consumer report, which is a background check or a credit check, was obtained. Our templates online will comply with both of these laws. So within the first 30 days, if you deny, you send an adverse action notice. What's most likely in our affiliate world is that within the first 30 days, you're not going to have enough information to either accept or deny the applicant. So therefore, there's 2 types of notices of incompleteness. The first one, you would use that link when the applicant still needs to provide to you information. So if they've only submitted 3/4 of what they need to submit, you use this template and you say, dear applicant, you still need to provide X, Y, and Z, and you have to provide them a reasonable amount of time to provide that information to you. Now, oftentimes in the Habitat world, within the first 30 days, you'll have everything you need from the applicant, but the affiliate still needs to take steps to evaluate the applicant, such as conduct its home visit. So that's where the third template comes in, the informational NOI. And this is the template you use when the outstanding requirements are on the affiliate. Either way, whichever situation you fall within, you need to send one of those 4 notices within the first 30 days of receiving the first piece of information used to evaluate. Remember I said there's 3 deadlines. We talked about the first 30-day window, and now we're talking about the second. So within 30 days after your ECOA application is complete, and we'll talk about what that means, you have to send either an adverse action notice or a notice of acceptance. So what is a completed ECOA application? The law allows you to define what in your affiliate's instance would make up a completed ECOA application. So we find that generally in the Habitat setting, an ECOA application is going to include all of the initial underwriting information that you obtain, plus the home visit, plus board approval, any steps that are taken to get to the final partnership agreement. So once your board decides, in practical terms, once your board decides if you are going to accept this applicant, you cannot sit on a notification. Instead, you have 30 days to inform the applicant. So you can either send them again an adverse action notice if you're denying them, or if you're accepting them, you have this 30 days to send them a notice of acceptance. And this is traditionally what we call the partnership agreement. And we have a template online, and because you'll see it's a blue link. And this will include all the conditions that are required to close on the loan and the home sale. So the sweat equity, what has to be re-verified in the ability to pay, any home buyer education. And we received a question specifically about this partnership agreement. Can we tell them the estimated loan amount in the partnership agreement? And yes, in our template you'll see that we do recommend you tell them an estimated loan amount, but it's important to include language that states that loan amount may increase if they have increased income upon the second income verification later on in the loan phase. And then your last 30-day deadline is denial. The Habitat loan process, as Sonia mentioned, really it's two phases, but the ECOA phase can continue into the rest of the phase and go until loan closing. So if at any time during any of the application process, right up until loan closing, you decide to deny that applicant for whatever reason, you only have 30 days from making that decision to deny to send them an adverse action notice, and that's during the entire process. So let's pause there. Does anybody have any additional questions on the ECOA disclosures and any of these 30-day deadlines? I'll take silence as no.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any.
All right, and then, we talk about this two-phase process, and the next process is really the loan or the RESPA phase, and that itself has several disclosures and timelines. So let's talk about those two. These are what we lump together as the initial disclosures. Unlike the ECOA application that you can define based on your practices and your policies, the RESPA application is set. So the law says you have a completed RESPA application as soon as you have what's listed on that slide: name, income, social security number, property address, property value, and loan amount. So this is often triggered when you get the appraisal and finalize your second underwriting process to get the loan amount. So what the law says, within 3 days of receiving a completed RESPA application, you need to provide your initial disclosures. And what your initial disclosures are will depend on if TRID applies to your affiliate. TRID is the TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure Rule. So the TRID rule applies to your affiliate if you originate more than 5 mortgages or more than 25 repair loans, whether they're secured or unsecured, in the previous year. So that means if you only originate 3 mortgages in the previous calendar year, TRID will not apply to you. But if you originate 3 mortgages plus even 23 unsecured critical peril loans, then TRID is going to apply to you. So you'll see on this slide, if TRID does apply, then you have to provide the loan estimate and your home loan toolkit. If TRID does not apply, then you provide the more traditional RESPA loan disclosures, the GFE, the TIL, the servicing disclosure, and the CFPB settlement cost booklet. We had one question: is there a fillable LE form? And to the best of our knowledge, there is no reliable fillable LE form online. You either have to fill out the PDF or use a software like Calyx to fill it out. And I think, Amy, you might want to step in and talk about some of the success that your affiliates have had with Calyx.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I was hoping to get a chance to do that. Calyx has been mostly good with a lot of frustration, and that has to do across the industry. It's not just Habitat, it's not Habitat Texas, but they have struggled with the new rules. That said, we've got an expert who has been working with us to develop customized templates, and we're continuing to work through some of the bugs with that. It's if you go yourself to buy Calyx, it costs about $6,000 for the first year. If you go through Habitat Texas, it's about $1,000 for the first year with $49 per month access fee after that. So let me know if you are interested in signing up, Amy at habitattexas.org. And we're also going to be working with Sue Chenevert, who is my counterpart in Louisiana and also a Calyx expert, to provide training on Calyx very soon, probably in April, whether or not you get Calyx through us. So as always, check the calendar side of our website or the newsletter for more information about that coming up. Thanks for giving me that chance.
Thanks, Amy. And whether TRID applies or not, all affiliates are subject to RESPA, which we already said, but all affiliates also have other initial disclosures that they need to provide within 3 days after the complete RESPA application. So this includes the affiliated business arrangement disclosure, if that's needed in your situation, if you're using a related third-party entity during the loan closing. Also, the homeownership counseling organizations. The privacy notice, we haven't talked about that, but that's under Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. You can either provide that with the initial application, or if you're not sharing personal information with third parties prior to this point, you can provide it now. Also, the law says you have to provide an appraisal promptly upon completion. So remember, now you also have to provide like we stated, your homeowners a copy of the appraisal. And the law says that promptly is about 7 days from it being complete. And remember that if there's any initial disclosures required by state law, to look at that also. Quick mention, TRID will not apply to most of your soft second loans. But remember, as Sonia said, we really want to be very transparent about the terms of the second loans, whether they're forgivable or not. So we recommend still using a TIL that explains any of the costs or triggers for payments and all the terms of your soft second. So even if TRID does apply to your affiliate, you wouldn't use the LE most likely for your seconds, but you still want to provide a TIL so the homeowner understands all of the terms. And then we have the closing disclosures. So if TRID applies to your affiliate, you need to provide the closing disclosure within 3 business days prior to closing. The closing disclosure replaces the HUD-1 settlement statement and final TIL, which is what you guys are more used to, and what you would use if TRID does not apply to your affiliate. And that needs to be provided at least 24 hours prior to closing. Remember, regardless of TRID, you still have to provide an initial escrow statement, either at closing or within 45 days after closing. And again, don't forget, closing disclosure is required by your state laws. We're running out of time, but I do want to mention the right of rescission. That is not for your traditional mortgages, but that's a closing disclosure that must be required on any repair loans that have a lien that are secured by a lien on the property. So not your unsecured loans, but any critical repair loans that are secured by the house.
And just a final question, once they hit 5 mortgages originated, then does TRID apply from that point forward, or do you reevaluate it annually?
No. Yeah, great question. So at the start of January, at the start of the year, whether TRID applies or not depends on how many originated in the previous year. But in your current calendar year, as soon as you hit the threshold, whether it be the 5 or 25 total, then TRID starts applying for the rest of the year and then for the next year.
Okay. And then did you say that we do a TIL instead of an LE for silent second mortgages?
Yes. Yes, a TIL is the way that you disclose the terms of the silent second.
Great. That's all the questions I see.
Okay, great. We have one slide on loan originator qualification, so let's do that real quickly. And I think Amy has done a great job of getting this information out to you, so you guys should all know that your state has a SAFE Act exemption, and you're not required to apply for it or seek renewal. So what this means is that your affiliates do not need to be registered as loan originator organizations like some other affiliates have to do in other states. Note, this exemption also applies to your servicing activities unless you service for other affiliates in a third-party capacity. So as long as you service your own mortgages, then you are exempt from any state registrations in both the origination and servicing context. Even though you are exempt under the SAFE Act, please remember that loan originators must still meet the TILA qualifications, and this is under federal law. Brief summary. Loan originators are all those people at your affiliate who are going to interact with the prospective applicants or the applicants in a substantive way regarding credit terms. So a lot of people say, well, if we outsource our loan origination, then we don't have any loan originators. And remember, that's not the case. Anyone on your family selection committee who's involved in the partnership phase, selecting the applicants who will be passed on to the third-party lender, and if they talk about the credit terms, then they are loan originators. In the Habitat setting, staff and volunteers constitute loan originators. That's on the QAC. And you'll see I hyperlinked, we have a great document, I think, on MPAR University that really walks you through who a loan originator is and what happens once you are a loan originator. And I like to emphasize that it's not the end of the world if you're a loan originator. All it means is that you have to be properly qualified and trained. So before you hire loan originators, you need to do a background and credit check and make sure that they have proper character and fitness to engage in these loan originator activities. And then, as you guys know, there's the annual training, and we have the ABA courses that fulfill this. So we really want to make sure that all of your loan originators are meeting the loan originator requirements. As a reminder, your great Texas trainers are here to be your first line of support in your questions, and I just can't say enough for how wonderful Sonia and I think they are and how lucky your state is to have them as a first line of specific support. I think they're really knowledgeable and great resources for you all. And if they can't answer it or we need to do more research, they can always reach Sonia and me, and we will do the research that's necessary. You can also call the Affiliate Support Center. And there's MPAR University, which I hope you're all familiar with, and also the ABA training. So with that, we'd open the floor to more questions if people have them.
You're going to ask about documents?
We can unmute the phone even. Hear your voices. Okay, well that got really quiet. Sabrina and Sonia? Yeah, I don't see any either. And my guess is that this is a reflection of the great trainers that we do have. So thank you again to the MPAR Texas team and Sonia and Sabrina. Really, really appreciate your time and work for us for the last several years to get this ready for us. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great week.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.